Hello and welcome again for a dive into nostalgic television. And of course we know that TV programs never go away. Once upon a time they went in what they called syndication, and they popped up in unusual time slots or on cable channels. Now of course they're all over the internet. They're either on a streaming service or they're somewhere to be had. And much to the delight of audiences who watched them back in the day, and also, I think, to some younger people who are curious about what we older folk used to watch. And what intrigues me about a lot of these comedies is, and I'm talking about comedies, gave that away, is the way they link to each other. How there are not only shows inspired by each other, but actual sequels or shows that operate in the same universe. This is not something that Marvel has just invented. And I'm thinking about the rural comedies that were on American TV screens during the late 60s and early 70s, and therefore seen through a lot of the world, particularly here in Australia where I am, and I guess to a slightly lesser extent in the UK. But the ones that I want to focus on today, all but one revolve around the same universe. The one that doesn't is still linked into that world because it's a rural comedy, an American sitcom that is living in an imagined present that reminds Americans of their imagined past, and spin-off of the Andy Griffith Show. Actually, more a kind of continuity from that show, a continuance of the Andy Griffith Show, which was a ratings blockbuster in the 60s. Mayberry featured on a widower farmer, Sam Jones, and his adventures, and characters from the Andy Griffith Show appeared particularly in the early episodes of the series. Mayberry, as I say, was the outlier because these other shows I'm going to mention were all linked, but they all, including Mayberry RFD, shared the same fate, which I'll get to later. The show that a lot of people will remember is the Beverly Hillbillies, the story of the Clampett family from the Ozark Mountains. They strike oil, Texas tea, and Jed and his family move to Beverly Hills, where it's a typical fish out of water sort of story. How do these rural folk, yokels, deal with the many, many millions of dollars that they got? I guess if it were to be remade, they'd be billionaires, with their cement pond, i.e. the swimming pool out the back, and the banker who is desperate to make sure that they use their money wisely, because it's in his interest that they do, and that a lot of it remains under his control. So that's the story. The characters, as I say, Jed, he had his nephew Jethro, his daughter, and we assume his mother, a character known only as Granny, maybe Jed's grandmother. That would have made her quite ancient. It's their shenanigans, but we learn something of their world, which then crosses over into other shows, including Green Acres, which is kind of a reversal because you've got a New York lawyer, Oliver Douglas, and his wife, an over-the-top Hungarian woman named Lisa, played by an over-the-top Hungarian woman, not Zsa Zsa Gabor, but her sister Ava, moving into the country. So they move into the kind of Hooterville universe, which was part of the Beverly Hillbillies scenario, and then they run into a bunch of characters, including Sam Drucker, the grocer, who also appears in a show called Petticoat Junction, which is about a widow, Kate Bradley, and her three daughters, and their Uncle Joe, and just the simple life that they live. And the central, I was going to say character, almost a character in this show, is the Cannonball Express, which is a train. And the train, as we find out in the first episode, is an unprofitable train route that basically operates as a taxi service for the locals. But it's all good fun. And again, it's this rural setting that makes it that way. These characters are larger than life, and they seem very strange, I guess, to the average urban American. So there's a period in the late 60s where all these shows are going on at the same time. And as I say, the three that are linked, which are the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Petticoat Junction, have crossover characters, and they've created a real universe that people came to love. And in fact, all these shows, plus Mayberry, were still very popular when they got cancelled. And they got cancelled by the CBS network and what they called, or has subsequently been called, the rural purge. The idea being that people are getting more sophisticated, they're more interested in smart urban comedies than in rural ones. And as I said, the evidence kind of said otherwise, but CBS wanted to modernize, probably under some pressure from advertisers, or perceived pressure from advertisers, to kind of get with it, the consumer society, where the television was, as it still is, commercial television, about selling stuff. So there you go. Briefly, do you remember these shows? Do you have favorite characters from them? Did you prefer one over the other? Do you think shows like that would work now? Are we ready for this kind of nostalgia? And if so, would it be nostalgia for the 60s, or might it be nostalgia for the 70s or the 80s? Let me know in your comments if you like this kind of thing, or the other kinds of things that I do here. Please like, subscribe, and do comment. And thank you so much for watching. It's been my pleasure to be your host. Boom.